Now, the second kind of cost that we've been talking to people about is project costing. Now, when you're taking on a job, when you're quoting for a job, no one, well, very few people are going to say those immortal words, Alex, whatever it costs, it's fine. Whatever it costs, don't worry, I'm good for it. Most people, in order for me to sell to them, will ask the question, how much is it going to cost? And I've then got to be ready with an answer. And that's not always an easy cut. That's not always easy to know on the spot. So again, we're going to kind of practice that. Now, different businesses are made of different things. Now, my business is what I'm mostly doing is selling time, and therefore I've got to. That's what I'm trying to work out all the time: is how much time is it going to take me or other people to do what I need to do. But there are also some things in that business that, you know, I've got to spend some time on here, and then there's some other costs that you've got to be aware of, Mr. Customer, that you're going to need to add in, and therefore I would advise you that you're going to need to spend this amount of money. So this is basically what you've got to kind of do. So for your product, you've got to think, okay, how many things do I need to buy? And what are they going to cost me? And how much time is it going to cost me to do that job? So as you can see, this is a very, very simple spreadsheet. I can send it to you. It's so simple though, you can build it yourself. I've got thing 1, thing 2, thing 3, and time. So the things are my materials or the things I've got to buy, and then I've got my time to do it. Then I've got a quantity column, then I've got a cost column, and then I've got a profit column. And then I've got a quote. So this is how much it's going to cost me. So for this particular product, I've got one of thing 1, and that costs me £10, but I'm going to sell that for £12. Then I'm going to need two of the second things I need to use. They cost me 20 quid each, but they're more valuable to my client, so I'm going to sell them at a higher profit. And then I need 3 of these other things at 30 quid. And I've you know, those I can really make a good profit on, and that starts to give me some money here. But the biggest element of the cost here is your own personal time. And that's because when we go back to our cash flow, if we look at all of our costs here, the biggest likely cost that you're going to have is your own time. And that's what we've got to recover through selling our stuff. So very well to have a look at these things and say, oh, I can sell that 20%, 50%. I can even double that value. The thing about it is that if that thing that you buy for £10 and you sell it for £12, you're only really making 2 quid. It's not going to come anywhere close to making this 1,000 quid that you're going to need to pay yourself. So somewhere along that line, this 1,000 quid has got to be paid for, and you've got to factor that into every job you do. So basically, you've got to take the amount of available hours that you have over your week and divide them by the amount of money that you've got to earn, and that gives you this most important cost, and it will probably be the biggest cost of your quote. And then you've got to say, okay, actually, in order to eat, survive, it's going to cost me, I've got to charge my time out at 50 quid an hour, and it's going to take me a day of my time to put this thing together, and that's my 442 quid. And then we have an idea of, okay, that's what I've got to sell this thing for. That's the cost of this particular product. This particular product has things in it and it has time in it. Taken as a whole, if you want to buy my services, that's what I've got to sell it at. And if I don't sell it at that, I can't make the business work, because that's what it is. So that's just a very, very simple costing sheet. Now, the thing about it is that once you've done that job, you can then go back and do the measure. So one of the most important ideas that I've learned in business is the idea called test and measure. Do we know that this thing is going to work? I don't know. Why don't we test it and see if it actually does? And the thing that you've got to do with is for everything that you sell, as soon as you close that thing off, what you should be doing is going back to that saying, go, oh, actually, isn't that interesting? I needed actually 2 of those things. So it wasn't £12, it was 24 quid. But I only needed 2 of these. I only needed 1 of these things. And I thought I was going to earn 60 quid from that. I actually only earned 30. And I actually needed 3 of these things here. And that cost an awful lot more than I was expecting. And oh, hell, it actually cost me, it actually took me 9.5 hours. And therefore it costs this amount of money. Now, you may or may not be in an opportunity to be able to reclaim that money from your client. In my experience, generally you can't. You've offered to do something for a certain cost, and you have to then fulfill that thing. Now, in the beginning, when you're starting off, it sounds bad, but it's not going to kill you if you have to work an extra couple of hours in order to deliver something. But what you should do from that is the next time you go and sell that product, you should price your time and your product better. You know, we can't do anything about the past, but we can learn from it. And it's one of the most powerful things that you will ever do. And one of the ideas that I like is a simple word called rematch. So the first time round, I lost. But hey, I can't do anything about that. But next time, I've got this time to play this game again. Rematch. I know exactly what I've got to do this time. I know exactly how this project's going to work, how this project's going to run. I'm going to need 2 of these, 1 of those, 4 of those, and it's going to take me 9.5 hours. Bang. Now you need to set it, and I know exactly how much it's going to cost me. Now that may not work exactly out, but the great thing about it is that actually you may actually the second time do it faster than you did it the first time, but you'll also know why it's worth doing it. But unless you do the relatively simple thing, which is just going back and figuring out what it actually cost you, you won't know. And this is the opportunity that this gives you. So test and measure. Do you know what margin you're making? And typically that I've found, you know, when you first go into it, I tend to be out, you know, and I tend to be, it tends to be a regular thing that I'm about 20% out. The first time I do something, I'm like, it won't, you know, I can do that. It will cost me that. I do the whole thing and I tend to be about 20% out. And that means that basically I've got to charge it 40% higher, or I've got how I can do it 40% cheaper. And both of those questions are really important. Okay, now your time is more important than your money. So going back to that little exercise, your time is usually the biggest thing that you've got. And you know, within your business, the biggest cost to your business will basically be you. And the only way that you can pay yourself is that if you charge yourself out enough. And as my coach said to me, Alex, if you don't value the service you do, if you don't value your own time, no one else is going to do it either. So the first exercise to do is to figure out from our cash flow thing is, hold on, I've got to earn. And this is exactly kind of where I started off. I'm sure it's where Paul started off in our spinning business. At the end of this month, I've got to earn this amount of money. The only place that is going to come from is these revenue streams, these customers, these people. And therefore, when they buy that stuff, we've got to make sure that once they've bought it and we've done all that work, it is actually making money. And the first few times of this, you may get it right, or you may get it wrong. Probably you'll get it, hopefully you'll get it about right. But as you go forward, if you take the time to figure out, okay, it took me this amount of time, not that amount of time, and it cost me that amount of money, not this amount of money, then over time, you'll get better at it. And that's when you'll see money start coming into your business. Now, just to kind of say this in the most basic way, and this really comes back to an important point I said at the beginning, is that, that actually our time is strictly limited. Looking at my life at the moment, I'm 42, or am I 43? 43. That means that maybe I've got 40 years on this life. That means that I've only really got less than 2,100 weeks. That's not an awful lot of time. Your time is pretty limited. And therefore, you've got to really take it seriously. And you've got to really, really convince yourself that your time is worth it. And you've got to figure out why it is worth it. Because that's what business is basically saying, okay, I'm going to take this much time over it, and people are going to pay me for that time, one way, shape, form, or another. This is just to say that, they kind of say there's about $36.8 trillion in the world. That there's a lot of money out there. Yeah. The world is actually, even at the moment, not short of money. What do we do when we need more money? We just invent some. But what we can't do is invent any more time for our life. There's a parable about it in the Bible. So, take your own time really, really seriously in your business. And as Paul said earlier on, prioritize the most important things in your life. Don't then get down to the things you have to do. And then, if you like distraction, do it in your spare time, but make sure that's after you've paid yourself. Right. That kind of brings us to the end of our learnings for today.